Suffering, though universally experienced, is often met with resistance, a visceral recoil from the raw edges of pain, loss, or uncertainty. Yet, embedded within these moments of anguish lies a paradoxical truth. Suffering is not merely an obstacle to endure, but a crucible for transformation, a force that shapes the contours of human resilience, empathy, and purpose. To dismiss it as meaningless is to overlook the profound ways it weaves itself into the fabric of growth, both individually and collectively, like the jagged cracks in a riverbed that allow water to carve new paths. Suffering fractures the illusion of control, revealing hidden reservoirs of strength and creativity we might never have discovered otherwise. It is the shadow that gives depth to light, the dissonance that makes harmony resonate, the friction that ignites the spark of evolution. Consider the inevitability of adversity. Life, in its relentless unpredictability, does not spare us from hardship, but within these trials lies the alchemy of resilience. When we confront suffering, whether physical, emotional, or existential, we are thrust into a forge where strength is tempered. Nietzsche's assertion that what does not kill me makes me stronger is more than a platitude. It is an acknowledgement of the human capacity to adapt, to bend without breaking. Psychological research on post-traumatic growth reveals that trauma, when navigated with intention, can seed unexpected renewal. Relationships deepen, priorities crystallize, and a quiet self-awareness emerges from the rubble of despair. This is not to romanticize pain, but to recognize that even in the darkest valleys, the seeds of resilience take root. Consider the oak tree, which grows strongest not in sheltered groves, but in open fields where winds batter its trunk, thickening its bark and driving its roots deeper into the earth. So too does suffering condition us, not by cruelty, but by necessity. A primal curriculum teaching us how to endure, how to rebuild, how to thrive in the aftermath of collapse. Suffering also binds us to one another. To have known grief, failure, or heartache is to carry an ember of empathy, a visceral understanding of another's struggle. Shared suffering dissolves the illusion of separation. It is the stranger's nod of recognition in a hospital waiting room, the unspoken solidarity between those who have weathered similar storms. Compassion, after all, is not born in comfort but in the raw, tender spaces where we confront our own fragility. It is here that we learn to extend a hand rather than a judgment, to build bridges where walls once stood. The ancient Greek tragedians understood this. Their plays, steeped in agony and catharsis, united audiences in collective vulnerability, reminding them that suffering is the thread connecting all mortal lives. In modern times, support groups for addiction, grief, or illness function similarly, transforming isolation into communion. When we share our stories of pain, we do more than seek solace. We create a mosaic of resilience, each shard of brokenness reflecting a shared humanity. Biologically and psychologically, suffering serves as a messenger. Physical pain, sharp and insistent, is a survival mechanism, a flare sent up by the body to signal danger. Emotional suffering, too, carries meaning. Loneliness whispers of our need for connection. Despair may point to unfulfilled purpose. Anger often masks deeper wounds begging to be tended. Ignoring these signals risks stagnation, but listening to them, truly leaning into their discomfort, can guide us toward healing. A toxic relationship, a soul-crushing job, or a neglected passion project all telegraph their costs through the quiet ache of dissatisfaction. Suffering, in this sense, is a call to action, a nudge to realign with what matters. Think of the artist who channels heartbreak into a masterpiece, the activist whose rage at injustice fuels decades of advocacy, or the parent whose grief over loss inspires a foundation to spare others the same pain. Even in nature, discomfort drives adaptation. Migrating birds endure grueling journeys to find warmer climates, and forests ravaged by fire birth new ecosystems from ash. Suffering, then, is not an aberration but an integral thread in life's tapestry, urging growth through disruption. On a broader scale, suffering has propelled humanity's most profound leaps. Discomfort breeds innovation, necessity mothers invention. Without the friction of unmet needs or unrelenting challenges, complacency might stifle progress. The same principle applies personally. The sting of failure can ignite determination, while the weight of grief can clarify what we hold sacred. Viktor Frankl, surviving the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust, distilled this into a lifeline. Even in the bleakest circumstances, we retain the power to choose our response, to find meaning in the act of enduring. His concept of logotherapy, the search for purpose as a survival mechanism, underscores that suffering, when met with intention, can become a compass rather than a cage. Frankl's observation that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how speaks to the transformative potential of meaning-making. It is not the suffering itself that holds power, but the stories we tell about it, the narratives of resilience, redemption, or rebellion that emerge from the wreckage. Existential and spiritual traditions have long grappled with suffering's duality. Buddhism frames dukkha, often translated as suffering, as an inherent part of existence, yet also the very gateway to enlightenment. By confronting impermanence and attachment, practitioners learn to dissolve the ego's grip, finding liberation in acceptance. Christianity envisions redemptive suffering, a path to transcendence through sacrifice and grace, exemplified by Christ's crucifixion as a symbol of love's triumph over agony. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius urged embracing hardship as a teacher, writing, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The poet Rumi, centuries ago, wrote that the wound is the place where the light enters you, a metaphor for how brokenness invites transformation. These perspectives do not trivialize pain but reframe it as a teacher, a harsh yet necessary guide toward wisdom. Even in secular contexts, suffering's role in shaping identity is undeniable. The novelist Haruki Murakami writes, "Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional," suggesting that while pain is a universal constant, our relationship to it determines whether it becomes a prison or a portal. To harness suffering constructively begins with acceptance, a surrender to its presence without denial or dramatization. The Serenity Prayer's plea for the serenity to accept the things I cannot change is not passive resignation, but a clearing of the emotional fog, creating space for clarity. From this grounded place, we can ask, what is this pain revealing? What might it compel me to release or reclaim? Journaling, therapy, or contemplative practices like mindfulness help untangle these questions, turning nebulous anguish into actionable insight. Consider the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold lacquer, honoring fractures as part of an object's history rather than flaws to conceal. Similarly, our scars, physical or emotional, can be gilded with meaning, becoming testaments to survival rather than shame. A growth mindset, as psychologist Carol Dweck illuminates, shifts the narrative from "why me?" to "what now?" Challenges become classrooms, setbacks, experiments. This reframe is not toxic positivity. It does not demand gratitude for trauma, but a deliberate pivot toward agency. Small, deliberate actions rebuild a sense of control, a walk taken, a boundary set, a creative project begun. Physical practices, yoga, running, gardening, channel restless energy into motion, reminding us that the body, too, can be an ally in healing. The act of moving through pain, literally or metaphorically, rewires neural pathways, teaching the brain that discomfort is not an end but a threshold. Yet suffering's greatest alchemy may lie in connection. By sharing our stories, we transform private pain into collective resilience. A cancer survivor mentoring others through diagnosis, a grieving parent advocating for mental health reform, or simply offering a listening ear to a friend in crisis. These acts transmute anguish into purpose. They remind us that our scars need not be hidden. They can be maps for others lost in similar terrain. The civil rights movement, born from centuries of systemic suffering, turned collective pain into a roar for justice, proving that shared anguish can dismantle even the most entrenched oppressions. On a smaller scale, everyday acts of vulnerability, a confession of failure, an admission of fear, create ripples of courage, inviting others to shed their armor and heal. Gratitude, too, plays a role, not as a forced silver lining, but as a grounding practice. In the wake of loss, noticing what remains, a sunrise, a friend's laughter, the persistence of breath, anchors us to the present. A gratitude journal becomes a record of survival, a testament to life's stubborn beauty amidst chaos. Scientists find that gratitude practices reduce stress and rewire the brain to focus on abundance rather than lack, a crucial shift when navigating loss. This is not denial, but a conscious choice to hold both truths, the ache of what's missing and the grace of what remains. But this journey demands nuance. Not all suffering is equal. Systemic injustices, poverty, racism, abuse, cannot be reduced to individual resilience. They require collective action and societal change. To tell a marginalized person to find meaning in oppression risks gaslighting. Their pain is not a lesson but a call to dismantle structures of harm. Likewise, toxic positivity, which dismisses pain with hollow optimism, risks silencing valid anguish. True growth honors the weight of suffering while gently, persistently seeking a path forward. It acknowledges that some wounds never fully heal, and that's okay. Healing is not about erasing scars, but learning to dance with the limp, as author Glennon Doyle writes. In the end, suffering's necessity lies not in the pain itself, but in how we meet it. It is the grit that polishes the stone, the storm that strengthens the roots. To navigate it with courage is not to seek martyrdom, but to walk through the fire with eyes open, heart tender, and spirit resilient. We emerge not unscathed but altered, wiser, softer, and more fiercely alive. As the light filters through our cracks, we become living proof that even in brokenness, there is wholeness waiting to be found. The Japanese poet Kobayashi Issa captured this duality in a haiku written after the death of his child. This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world, and yet, in those final words, and yet, lies the essence of suffering's paradox, an acknowledgement of life's fragility alongside an indomitable whisper of hope. It is in that space, between the ache and the awe, the wound and the light, that we discover our capacity to alchemize pain into purpose, to write new chapters from old scars, and to find, in the very heart of suffering, the stubborn, defiant pulse of what it means to be human.